Welcome to Live with Greg, or Live with Greg, depending on semantics.
And here we are with another episode of Live with Greg. And 10 years into doing this is my first episode that isn't done in person with the special guest. So kind of breaking protocol. But I think in a way, my special guest is about breaking protocols.
100%. I was like, hell yeah, break that protocol.
Yeah. So I'm here with my niece, Esther Rose Bent.
Hello.
All right, Esther Rose. Is it okay to call you Esther Rose? Publicly? Yeah. Out in the world?
Yeah, publicly. Don't tell my agent. That's not my actual stage name. So you gotta call me by bent fingers, or we have a problem with my PR.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So, is there anything on your mind that you'd like to talk about?
No.
All right, we're done.
You have to kind of lead this one for me. I've got
All right. So, one thing I was thinking about is how close our families are. Just like I was thinking of you and your cousin in New York, and me and my brother and sisters. I feel very close to you. It seems like there's a lot of love in our extended family.
Yeah.
What do you think the source of that is?
I would say, just based on growing up and observing life in an adult lens, I think our families choose caring about someone and loving means more than anything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, your phone bounced off for a second. So
am I back?
You're back. So you were saying through your adult lens, our families...
Oh, yeah. So growing up and just noticing how life works, I would say that our families choose to, love each other no matter what. There's not like an expectation. You know what I'm saying? There's just a love you where you're at sort of thing. And I think that just makes it like a peaceful place for anyone to be. If I don't see someone in 10 years, I'm not going to be like, you haven't seen me in 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like loving each other where we're at. And I think that's what keeps it close without, being in the same city or whatever, is because, like, we're just excited to see each other because nobody's being an asshole, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And I was thinking, too, because I think Grandma Ella, for me, embodied that. Like, love everybody regardless. Everyone's welcome at the table. Yeah. And I was thinking how often in families, when that individual that seems to be the linchpin passes, then the family just splinters. But that has not been true in our families. We don't have like a single person that's holding it all together.
Right. And I think that, unfortunately, all of our families have kind of gone through some difficulties with their own circle and close, we all kind of lived through a lot. So I think that also gives you a different perspective of like, let the little things go. You know what I'm saying? Like, rather than having one person who's holding it together, it's kind of this like, you need each other in order to survive. And I don't think a lot of families feel that ever. And it's funny, it's a double-edged sword. You're like, I would hate for anybody to go through tragedy and loss and all that hard stuff. However, I would also hate to be on the other end where like you don't feel a true connection with your family. Like, that sounds awful. So it's an interesting life. But, yeah.
Well, I always ponder why it seems that the deepest lessons of love and peace come from pain and tragedy.
Yeah. I'm very anthropological in my thinking, and human beings are animals, and in a way, if you're not ever taught to survive, you're not going to be very strong. You know what I'm saying? So I think that goes in the same way as with, like, when you deal with pain and then good things come out. It's like you become a more well-rounded person because you learn a lot of what it means to survive, whether that be emotionally, physically, whatever. We got a lot of traffic happening right now.
You're fine. You sound fine.
Oh, good. It's the earpiece. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like in a way it's not the fact that like pain makes a better life, but I think it just teaches more higher level lessons. Someone who's battled cancer, someone who's ran a marathon, someone who's done something that takes a lot of physical will, I think is going to have a brighter perspective because they've made it through something, rather than someone who hasn't had to go through like a lot of challenge. They're not going to know what it feels like to come out, which is like a runner's high. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think just that way, like similar to an animal that, goes out and hunts, families closer together because they're eating that food together. Going out and hunting is scary and it's a challenge. But I don't know, that's the way I think of things. It's like we're just animals when it comes down to it.
Well, do you think it is a survival of the fittest world then?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. So where does peace, love, and understanding enter into that scenario?
Well, I was going to say, I know it is for me in my perspective, because, and this is like something that I have to check myself on a lot, because I've gone through a lot and come out of it. So if someone I know is complaining and saying they're having a hard time emotionally or like with depression or something, I find my brain going like, that's weakness because you haven't gone through anything yet, So like that whole idea of like, I forget what you just said, of like
empathy, peace, love.
It is
peace,
sort of
love,
thing.
Peace, love, and understanding.
I think the peace, love, and understanding is something you have to choose. I don't think everybody has that innate. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, for me, my true nature is, like, I want to fight. And so if something seems weaker to me, like, I feel that first kind of, like, what do you call it? Like, natural impulse is
right.
to stomp on something that's weaker. But I'm choosing, like, I don't want to be that way because I care about people. So I choose that peace, that love and understanding, but it's not my first reaction. My first like mental reaction is going to be more aggressive. So
I think that speaks to a strength in that choice. Like I heard Bishop Desmond Tutu say that it's actually a strong person who chooses joy and forgiveness and peace. Mm-hmm. And I think it's what you're just speaking of, is we have that animal impulse of rah.
Yeah.
And there's a strength to then not go into that, to pull back. That takes strength.
And that's exactly what I'm saying, is like, just like talking to many, many different people in many circles, like going through difficulty is a gift because of learning strength, like you, whether you want to be, I think there's like a fine line of being like self-righteous and actually just like self-aware. But when you're talking to someone who has not grown and hasn't had to become a stronger person, you immediately kind of glaze over what they're talking about and go like, oh, they don't understand. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that is, you know, I think just part of being a human and feeling each other human, or feeling each other out. But I think if you can remember that it's a gift to have that strength, then you're not going to just putting other people down. I don't know. I'm rambling now. I don't know where I went. I don't know where I went on my topic there.
Well, so you're someone who artistically, you hang out with people, like motorcycles is a big part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of that, to me, like what I see is sort of an outlaw scene. And what I mean by that isn't Hell's Angels breaking the law. It's,
Right.
it's that freedom of the road. You're out in the desert, you're out in the wilderness. There's a wildness that's a natural part of being.
Yeah. It's very funny because, like, you have the scene that I'm in, which is like, oh my gosh, it's like the fashion motorcycle scene. You know what I mean? So like, a lot of the rides I go for a photo shoot. So it's very funny because I just always wanted to ride motorcycles, and I'm not very good with groups. So like, usually I would ride by myself. But if someone says they want to take your photo for me, I'm like, sure. You know what I mean? That sounds cool. Pump up my ego a little bit. But it's funny because to the outsider, it's like, oh yeah, they're like riding motorcycles is, you know, this last shoot I did, and I'm not putting it down at all. I'm just trying to like speak the honest truth about it, is that I don't think that would have ever happened as organized as it was without there being a camera. And, you know, the idea of what people are seeing through social media and like what you're perceiving is like that outlaw freedom, stuff like that. I'm like, yes, but to me that happens like, and for me, like, I'm not speaking for other people, but for me that happens when I'm by myself. It doesn't really happen when I'm in a group or anything like that. To me, it's fashion when I'm in a group. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like, I'm performing. When you see what you see on social media, that's my performance. But when I'm actually experiencing that freedom and that outlaw and that just get me the hell out of town, that's by myself. And that's what people don't see. So it's just, the motorcycle scene right now is so interesting. And it's fashion. I've always let punk rock and fashion go together. Art and fashion go together. You know what I mean? Like, it's all really intertwined. But yeah, that whole idea of like the freedom of it and the outlaw nature that you see in the social media and the photos, it's so fashion. You know what I mean? It's like
not as wild and terrible as it seems on social media.
No, I mean, it was hilarious because wild and terrible shit happens. But for example, it's my perfect, like, I just love it because I'm all about honesty and getting rid of the veil, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So on this past ride that we did, my friend and I thought it'd be way easier to load our bikes into the van instead of riding them out because the wind's really gnarly out in Joshua Tree. And she didn't know how to load the bikes into the van, and neither did I. But I was like, she's got it. And we didn't know how to do it. It was a comical morning trying to get them in there. And then we only strapped down one side. And so my bike flew into the side of the wall and broke the front brake lever, right? And so to social media, they don't hear any of that part. all they hear is like, oh shoot, her front brake lever broke and she rode anyway. But they don't hear the fact that we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And
They
then
didn't tie their bikes down properly.
yeah, and all because we were, not wanting to do the heavy ride, which is the funniest part of it all. And like, we're girls just wanting to have fun, dress cute, and ride with our friends. Like that's kind of the best part about it, is if you take out the like, I'm not trying to go to Sturgis on my chopper in a pair of like studded pants,
Right. Levi's vest.
Yeah, like it's very funny. But I love it because it's I learned how to ride my motorcycle without a front brake because of that, and that was super valuable because I was safe in a group. Sometimes when you're riding, your front brake goes out because air gets in the line, and if I would have had that happen by myself, I would have freaked out. So no matter how silly and like corny it is, like it's there's always good things that come out of it. I don't know. Now I'm rambling.
All right. So you've shared with me that removing the veil, being honest, that you would like the world to know the truth of mental health, and that there's a lot of stories out that you're aware of. Are you comfortable sharing some of your own personal experience with that?
Yeah, totally. Like I said, I'm happy to share.
All right, so let's do this. Have you contemplated what the potential seeds of your own challenges with mental health are? Like the sources.
The sources of where it came from?
Right.
Oh, well, through lots of therapy that I didn't want to go to. I had to learn the hard way that it started a lot earlier in my childhood than I knew. So, I mean, I don't know who your audience that's listening to the podcast or not, but like a big part of what the tragedy was in our life is that my brother passed. And then there was a lot of death even before that. So I had always thought that like all of my issues were coming from that one event. But after getting to kind of go deeper into what the hell was happening, because I was having these short circuits in my brain and I couldn't figure out how to fix it, because I'm usually pretty good at fixing my own mental health, but it got to a point where I couldn't anymore. And it all, what I'm diagnosed with, bipolar 1. And it is something that you're born with and can show its head later in life or earlier in life. And for me, I always thought people with bipolar were, having multiple personalities. And I kind of had this like bad stereotype about it of they're the girls that are like cheating on their boyfriend and then like back together the next day. It was kind of just like a bad stereotype that I had in my head. So when I was diagnosed with it, I was like, what? No. Like immediately I was like,
bad person.
yeah. I'm like, there's no way. Like I'm messed up in my own right, but it's because of what's happened to me. It has nothing to do with bipolar. And I remember the psychiatrist was so sweet. She was like, okay, I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying this medicine might help you. Just so you know. And I was like, all angry. And I stormed off of the Zoom appointment. Like, how dare she say I have that? And then, I kept having these issues pop up. And she's like, I just think you might really benefit from this medicine. Like, so nice. And I was like, no. And then this is the funniest part. I don't remember if I told you this before the podcast, Uncle, but I needed to try the medicine was I watched the new Elvis movie and had a full-blown psychotic break during that movie. And it was hilarious looking back at it because I'm like, what? Elvis? Really? But when you look at the science behind it, I saw the movie in IMAX with like kind of that 360.
Oh, right.
Sorry, did you say something?
That the screen that kind of wraps around you.
Yeah. So it was like an all-encompassing sensory experience, which for a normal person is great. And I found out with someone with bipolar 1 literally takes them out of their body because it's very similar to epilepsy. So the medicine that I have is also used for people who suffer from epileptic seizures. And so anyway, back to that. Finally, I was like, okay, if I can't watch an Elvis movie, I should probably try this medicine because I told my psychiatrist about it. And she's like, yeah, you should really try this stuff. And I was like, all right, fine. And then I was so scared of it because, like, the stigma of bipolar was so awful in my head. And then it helped. That was the funniest part is like after I started taking it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm on planet Earth. Because what would happen to me when I'd have an episode was my whatever emotion I was feeling would trigger physically. So like, let's say I was angry, my whole body would start to just have a hot flash. I'd shake and I couldn't come down. And it would make the whole world kind of like turn into this dark, scary other dimension, essentially is what it felt like. And imagine getting upset over nothing, and that happens every time. So like it was starting to take a toll on my relationship with my boyfriend to the point where we broke up because I couldn't get my feet back on the ground. And like, anyway, I was struggling with it for my whole life. And then the medicine started to help and like it would regulate. And that's what it was meant for. And, me and my boyfriend joke of like, you're crazy when the medicine works. And it was undeniable. Like my brain finally felt like I was on planet Earth. And I was like, wow, this is what it's like to think rationally. This is amazing.
Wow.
And, so going back to like, your question about the seeds of where my mental health started, it turns out after, getting to talk a lot more after I kind of realized, okay, like bipolar 1 really is the diagnosis that works for me, Mm-hmm. I got to talk to my psych a little bit about like my medical history as a kid. And I had a lot of episodes that, because of growing up in the Christian faith, I thought were one-on-ones with God, which was very interesting as a kid. Like I thought for a long time that I was God's only chosen one, because that's a part of bipolar 1 is like, it's called this, hyper religiosity, where you think you are either the Messiah or like the Virgin Mary, that like super, super important, crucial, like center of the universe sort of feeling.
Right.
And it's interesting to say out loud because, it sounds really self-absorbed, but it's terrifying when it happens because you feel like you can see the sky cracking. You feel like it is terrifying. And it happens a lot. Like it's part of that chemical spike that your brain creates this reality. And the psychiatrist was telling me a lot of artists and musicians never know that they'd struggle with it. And they just think that this is the world that they live in. And then until it like becomes a problem where you can't live with it anymore, which was happening to me, like I couldn't rationally think, and I was scared of what I was doing because I thought I was Lou Reed and gonna, this is, sorry to say it out loud, but at one point I thought I was the new Lou Reed and I was gonna shoot heroin and make an album and die, and it was gonna be the greatest album of the world. Like that was the kind of mental patterns that were starting to happen when it got to a point where I needed to get help, So going back to the seeds, if you add severe trauma and tragedy to that, you're never going to know that you actually have an also chemical imbalance happening, And I got really, really good at taking care of myself so that nobody saw what was happening internally, which made me feel like I was in the center of that universe. Like no one knows what I'm actually feeling, seeing, except God. And then that became destructive because God became, like I was losing touch with reality. So it was like I was getting pulled out from here. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, so if that answers your question a little bit, I keep going on rants. So
well,
you have to reel me back in.
Podcast is about ranting, so you're on point. Kind of thinking of how earlier you were talking about how we're animals. And, we have these reflexive biologies, like weaker, I'm going to stomp on weak, rawr, that. So do you look at your bipolar disease is referring to it as a disease on point?
I think so. It's either disorder or disease. I don't know.
All right, so looking at it, at your bipolar 1 from a biological viewpoint, do you think you were born with a bipolar 1 biology that as a young child, which is a very innocent, imaginative phase of life, just seemed like, oh, look at, there's little Esther playing, as you become more and more an adult. And then as you referred to earlier, your brother's passing, which was a very extreme life event, sort of like the house of cards collapsed.
Yeah, honestly. So that was what was kind of a relief, honestly, when I got the diagnosis, was the fact that it is something that you are born with. It was a relief for me because there was a lot of stuff in my childhood that was happening internally that was, terrifying. Like at one point, I would create something that didn't exist, and then I would get so confused because technically I'd be lying, as a child, but in my head I was like, but I created this reality. You know what I mean? So that was happening to me as a kid, and I just thought I was a chosen one. I was like, this is what I have to deal with because I'm the chosen one. You know what I mean? Right. Which is, I don't want to be the chosen one. Hell no.
I don't think even Jesus, if we just look at that story, I think there at the end, he was sort of asking, are you sure I got to do this? Like, you sure?
Right.
So now that you have found a way to live positively with this mental health challenge, have you found there's aspects to it that your life is enriched by? Have you learned to take it as an ingredient and alchemize its existence to a positive in your life?
Honestly, I don't think I'm at that stage of it, because right now I'm in I feel relieved that I finally have help, but I still struggle with the fact of sometimes I have, flare-ups that even medicine doesn't stabilize. And I go, oh shit, am I going to have to go back to that world that I lived in before? You know, because it was really like difficult. Like it, and I think that's a struggle that I have with it, is I have a hard time reflecting back at my life and like feeling good about any decisions that I made, because I feel like I feel like I was crazy, you know? So I have to give myself grace when I look back and be like, hey, not all of that was, you know, a bad decision. Not all of that was you being mentally unstable, you know, but it's a struggle, because I feel so much more stable now than I ever have in my life, that looking back is like, oh, I don't even want to be associated with her, you know?
Right.
And so I don't know if I've gotten to a place yet where I, you know, take that and find positivity in it. I'm super thankful that now I have peace, but I think I have to forgive, you know, those 26 years of what I had going on.
So you're in the process of forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Was there any loved ones, people very close, or you felt close with, that fell off in this process of diagnose and cure? Like they couldn't do it?
No, honestly. I was nervous to, you know, I was nervous of what my parents were going to say when I told them. Mom was like, it runs in your family. And if medicine is what helps you, I'm happy it's helping. Because, you know, for some people, their belief and their faith is what helps them through it. For me, it wasn't working anymore.
Yeah. So there was a coming out experience with this diagnosis.
Yeah. And I remember telling my parents and their reaction, as well as I remember telling my cousin Hannah, and she was like, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, right? She's like, oh yeah, much more than you being an alcoholic. Because the whole thing that got me to the point of finally getting a diagnosis was, you know, my brain broke, and I went to rehab because, you know, I thought I was Lou Reed, and that wasn't healthy. So I went to rehab, and I was convinced that I was an alcoholic, and that's why I was there. And I've never really had a problem with alcohol in that way. So Hannah was like, okay, like whatever you think. And then when I was like, hey, this is actually what happened, she's like, yep, that makes way more sense.
That's great.
So that was funny.
And then with your boyfriend, what was that initial conversation of, oh, by the way, like this is what I have? Because you guys were broken up.
Yeah, so we got back together while I was in rehab, and also my headphone might die, so I might need to transfer you to speaker in a second.
Okay.
So I was in rehab when we got back together, which was amazing because I never wanted to be broken up with him in the first place. So having that safe place where I could have counseling every minute of the day, essentially, was what I needed to, you know, get back to earth, essentially. And then I left rehab while we were, you know, back together, and then I tried to see a therapist, just a normal.
We lost your headphone.
Did I lose you?
Yeah, it's out.
Still there? Can you hear me still?
Yep.
Okay.
I hear you.
Is it worse?
It's kind of working.
Oh, sorry. Trying to see if I have another one. I think that's it. Well, can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Because the other option is I could put you on the laptop, but I don't know if you'll hear me any better.
That's all right. Let's keep rolling, see what happens.
Okay. But yeah, so anyway, I was trying to get a counselor, and I didn't know the difference between a psychiatrist and a,
Counselor.
And I had made an appointment with a psychiatrist not knowing that there was a difference. And so when I got the diagnosis, I wasn't even looking for it, And when I told Tyler, he's like, I could have told you that. Same thing that Anna said. And I'm like, gosh dang it, you guys. And he's like, well, you can't just tell someone they're bipolar. That's like a diss.
Plus, if they aren't on meds, they may beat you up.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, you were already aggressive enough.
So you cut out for a second there. Are you saying that you went to book an appointment with a counselor, and by accident you got a psychiatrist?
Yeah, because I didn't know the difference.
Which turned out to be a blessing.
Oh my God, it saved my life. Seriously, like I said, it's hard for me to reflect on the person I was before and feel okay with it because I was so lost, I was so unstable. But yeah, it was a total blessing.
All right. So do you have a spiritual element to your belief system and lifestyle?
I think so. I honestly think it's difficult because of there was a lot of really awful things that happened to me as a kid in the church that I had not ever dealt with until as an adult. And so I think that has made, like, unfortunately, if I read the Bible or read anything that is related to Christianity, I get the same feeling I had when that horrible stuff happened when I was a kid. Unfortunately, that is a trauma response. So I can't open that door because it's destructive. And I think that's been a really hard thing to like communicate with my parents, even though they're super understanding. Like, it's not that I don't believe, it's that I can't mentally go back to that dogma, for lack of a better word, because it is so painful to experience that feeling again of like, because of all the stuff that happened, I never dealt with the fact that some really awful things happened at the church as a child that you'd never want to happen to a child at the church. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Classic bad situation. So, I teach yoga, and I learned a lot about the 8 limbs of yoga, but I think because all of my life was hyper religiosity and hyper spirituality, it freaks me out when I start to go to that place. And I feel like I'm the most stable just knowing, like, I believe in God. I know God is around me and with me, but that's all I got, and that's all I need. If I go any deeper, it's destructive. So I would say that's kind of where I'm at with that.
So one of the things I personally appreciate about God is the eternal, the infinite aspects of it. And what that does for me personally is the finite element of this particular life I'm embodying is less important. So the traumas of this finite existence can be forgiven because there's a far bigger universe that is we are a part of.
Yeah. That's a good perspective.
All right. Um,
Oh, yeah. What do you think? And the reason why I say it like that is because I respect what anybody believes, and I don't have any answer to what I think is the way it is, you know? And because, like what I was saying, I can't think existentially or else it shatters me. Like, I have to keep my feet as close to one foot in front of the other as I can, or else it takes me through a bad loop, you know?
right.
So I think whatever a person, you know, including you, like, whatever your perspective is with, you know, the eternal, the forgiveness, God, heaven, whatever, I think that's wonderful. And I think that everybody who hasn't found what stabilizes them and grounds them, I hope they do find it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, that's awesome, because, like, yeah, that, I think whatever you believe and whatever helps you as a crazy world we're living in, then that's great.
That triggers another thing I was contemplating, knowing this episode was coming up, is there's two stories I can think of that are spiritual stories that in essence are saying this world is not our natural place. It is a place of suffering and hardship, and which isn't our natural, it's not why we were created.
Right.
Do you, is that an aspect of your belief? You're looking around and going, seeing the world?
I don't think so. I honestly, I I think I've become, like, someone is apolitical. I think I've become existential. Like, I just don't. I know in my gut that I don't know, and believing something else that could exist, and, like, whole. Because here's the thing: when you have your whole belief system ripped out from you,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of shows a different perspective of, like, even if I believe that, it might not happen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, even to say that I believe that that's the way the world is, like, I don't think I have a belief in that. I think I'm open to whatever happens. Like, I think that's where I'm at with it. It's like, I know that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know nothing. You know that song?
So yeah, that's brilliant. That's sort of that. Yeah, never mind. I'm going to get into some academic thing that I know nothing about.
Yeah, go ahead. I like it.
What the hell? Knowing your parents as closely as I do,
Mhm.
and I is their faith a challenge in your relationship with each other?
I don't think so. Again, my parents are two of the most open and accepting people when it comes to who you are. Like, their door is open, and all they want is to share what has helped them, you know, and what they believe in. They want to share that so that it helps you too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I can't really go into depth with them about the whirlpool that I have experienced in my belief system. But I know that they don't challenge it. Like, I know that they just, they give to me scriptures and stuff that, like, they think that would help my situation, and I appreciate that. And I wish that I didn't have the guttural reaction of, like, that trauma that comes back whenever I read or like listen to anything like that. And it's not their fault at all. That's the saddest part for me. So, like, I don't think it necessarily, like, affects our relationship. I just feel that I wish those things wouldn't have happened so that I could have a more
Yeah.
communication.
That is the bummer of this world, is these instances that happen with probably very little consciousness involved. And then the impact of those moments resonate sometimes through an entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. And something that can help someone can hurt another. And I think that's been the hardest thing in terms of, discussing faith with my parents, is that what helps my dad so much in in the mental health that he struggles with hurts me the same amount as it helps him,
Right.
Like, it doesn't bring me comfort, it brings him comfort. So it's kind of it's a bummer. Like, I can't change that. You know what I mean?
Right. So this may be a topic like too sensitive, but I was contemplating too, like you're a drummer, and your brother was a drummer. And I was wondering if there was any felt connection with him in your drumming.
There has been, I think, more than I don't even know what I'm trying to say. So I've noticed that feeling of connection with him when I'm drumming, when I'm in a really uncomfortable place of who I'm drumming for. So when I feel like I'm unsafe with the audience that I'm drumming in front of, and, like, I just don't want to do it because I don't feel safe. Because part of what happened as a kid is, like, I didn't feel safe, and I was made to perform in a way I didn't ever want to. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that feeling sometimes comes back when I'm drumming, if there's a creepy man or if there's, a trauma response that happens, whatever. I've had to, like, close my eyes and be like, all right, Cole, help me here. Like, because I need your strength to be able to do this. Because Cole was like my savior figure in life. He was the only person I felt that I could talk to that would not tell me I'm crazy or shut it down with whatever I was feeling with scripture. He was the only person, other than Tyler now, who I felt like I could truly unbiasedly talk to when I'm having a mental crisis, and losing that was it broke me, it broke my brain because I didn't have anybody that I felt like I could talk to honestly.
Yeah.
And so through playing drums, I've noticed that connection when I feel like I can't play and I need to, because I'm on stage or whatever the hell. That's when I feel that connection come through. I think because I still, honestly, it's been, 10 years, but I still haven't accepted the fact that he's gone. So it's hard for me to feel that, like, that he's not here in a real way. And that's what's hard, is like my brain's like, no, don't want to accept it. And it's made it very difficult to process grief for me. Like, I just get anger because I'm like, no, that didn't happen. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think if I ever get to a point where I can accept it, I'll probably feel more of a connection in that way. That's a positive. But yeah, for now, it's unfortunately still not something I've, accepted, for lack of a better word.
Has your medicine been a challenge in your creative life? Has your creativity been challenged by taking the medicine that helps you?
Nope, I don't think so. I think what one thing that I've noticed a change in is I used to go to shows all the time, and I felt like I was like ignited by the music. And like I was saying, that bipolar 1 is very similar to epilepsy. So if you're in a concert and you're in a mosh pit, you are taken to another world, because you're literally, your brain is like, boom, synapse fired, chemical reaction, let's go. And it was the most incredible experience. Like, seriously, it was like out of this world going to a show. Now when I go to a show, it doesn't happen that way, and I get to experience it like a normal person. And it's very
Yeah. You know what I'm reminded of is I saw a Peter Gabriel show at the Greek Theater in Berkeley, and I was on mushrooms, and the experience was incredible. It was out of this world. There were things going on. Like, he has this one song where the chorus is, I hold the light, and he was on this big spotlight shooting straight up, and he opened up his hand, and obviously he had a mirror in it, but at the time I didn't know it. This light shot out of his hand. I was just like, whoa.
So the experience of seeing a show on mushrooms is the experience of seeing a show bipolar.
Right.
That's what was so funny, Uncle, is like when I was growing up, I didn't do drugs because I didn't need to.
Right.
I literally was like, you guys, I can feel I'm so good. Like that crazy out of body experience naturally. And I thought it was because I was, the chosen one. I was like, this is just because I had never even heard of bipolar 1, which is the most common mood swing. I didn't have mood swings. I had mania and a little bit of the down. I didn't really have too much of the down, because my downs would usually be like 1 hour of complete panic attack, and that was it. And then I'd go right back up to mania again. So, but yeah, experiencing a show, like I should make a bumper sticker, be like, I don't need drugs, I need bipolar.
Well,
I don't need drugs. Yeah.
Also, in listening to your experience, I have a resonance where, like, oh, I've experienced that, and it sounds like your natural experience was just like, if we take the Spinal Tap thing, it was on 11.
Yeah. Yeah. And oh my gosh, it was amazing. So I still have so much fun going to a show, but it's not the same at all, which is really interesting, because it was that sensory thing that would happen, and it's, thinking of it like scientifically, I'm like, that makes so much sense. When I would watch a movie that I really loved, I would be in that movie. Like, it would be for that time that I was watching it. Like, it would give me superpowers. And that's what is a little scary about bipolar, is one day your superpower is going to tell you to jump off a building or whatever the hell, and that's why it's scary. Because, like, for me, I would do some pretty, like, incredible things that I never knew how to do because I believed I could. And I still do that, but now I have, that's not going to hurt me or anybody else, right?
Right. And that's what I'm recalling when we spoke about this a while back. You were saying to me, like, you had this experience like your boyfriend is evil and attempting to do things to you, and he's standing there going like, I'm not, but in your world he is, and there's no way for him to communicate reality and what you're living in that moment.
Because, now that I have a rational way of thinking, like coming out and looking at it in third person, I'm like, oh, like poor Tyler, because like he really wasn't doing anything. But that it's like living in a movie. That
Right.
character that he became in my spy was terrifying, and I couldn't fix it. And he couldn't fix it either, because we had to just let it calm down. And in the first 4 years of our relationship, he really, like, he probably is the most wonderful person in my world, or he is the most wonderful person in my world. And thinking about how much he endured that wasn't based in reality makes me like, I'm like, I'm so sorry, like
Yeah.
it's awful. But that's again, I am just so thankful that now I don't have that, and I can actually know when I'm having a spike, because I still do. Like I still have manic episodes, but I know it. That's what's really cool.
And do you have resources for yourself that if you're by yourself, you can manage yourself in a period of time?
I've gotten pretty good at it. Like I'll go for a walk, or talk about it. Like I'll call Tyler and be like, hey, I'm having this happen, and like we'll talk it through, and that's helpful. But I'm still figuring out that a lot of the deep-seated traumas that I haven't gone and like worked through, like will come up now that I'm in a stable place, because they have room to. My body's like, ooh, we're safe. We're going to deal with this. And I'm like, no.
Not yet.
I'm not ready. But yeah.
So as we're coming to a close, do you have advice for me as a lay person where I can consciously be an ally in your life?
I mean, I think you've always been an ally for me, because you've known me my whole life. And part of, like, I've always been with you, similar to where, like, I could say anything and you're like, okay. But I think that's just that honest openness that you have, and knowing that you're not going to I don't know how to say it other than, like, I don't think your perspective changes of me no matter what I say. Like, I'll always be your Esther Rose sort of thing.
That's right.
And I've always felt that way. Like, no matter, both of us, like, no matter what we're going through, there's always no judgment. So I think just continuing that openness of conversation that we've always had, and that curiosity is awesome. As we grow up as adults, I'm almost 30 now.
That's impossible.
I know. Especially when you're 39, right?
What about, is there something you could share with someone that may be at the beginning of dealing with their own mental challenges that you have learned for yourself, where you're like, wow, I wish I kind of knew this at the beginning of my experience?
I think if I could give advice, it would be very careful not to just take medicine, because you have to look at the fact that pharmaceutical companies are benefiting from this mental health crisis. Sorry, it's loud. Hold on.
You're good.
Pharmaceutical companies are benefiting from the mental health crisis that's happening after we have survived a pandemic as a people. So I would recommend, if you're dealing with the feelings of anxiety or depression, only use medicine that is for if you have a headache, you take Advil. You're not going to take Advil 24/7. So I'd recommend fixing any mental health issue with medicine first by situational, and try to stabilize yourself naturally first. And then if you're truly still struggling to stabilize yourself naturally, then look into something that's daily. Because I've seen so many friends who have been diagnosed just to be diagnosed, and their quality of life has gone down. Medicine's not supposed to do that. Medicine's supposed to make your quality of life go up. So I think that's the most important thing I'd say is watch your quality of life. Let someone close to you watch your quality of life. Because when I started my medicine, I said, Tyler, if I change negatively, tell me and I will stop this. So I think that's a very, very safe way to try any medicine for your mental health. But always try to do the natural way first. And, sometimes chemically the natural way doesn't help, but if you're taking medicine and the quality of your life decreases or it gets worse, get off of it. So that's my advice.
All right. That's good advice. Anything else that you'd like that we didn't touch on that would be good for this episode?
I don't know. I don't think so.
All right. Well, I love you very, very much.
Love you too.
Thank you for doing this. We'll see you down the road a piece.
Wait, what'd you say? See you in world peace?
No, see you down the road a piece.
Oh, yeah. I thought you said see you in world peace. I was like, all right.
Yeah, I'll see you in world peace. I like that better.
All right. I love you, Uncle.
Love you.